I'm 35. Samantha, a successful financial advisor married to James for 7 years. We built a beautiful life together in our Chicago suburb home, our careers thriving. My younger sister Natalie and I were once close, but lately we've drifted apart. I never imagined our relationship would end up where it did, especially not at my mother's birthday dinner at that upscale restaurant. No one saw it coming. Before I tell you how my life fell apart in a single dinner drop, a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and hit subscribe if you're new here. Trust me, this journey is one you won't want to miss. Before everything fell apart, my life with James was what most would call picture perfect. We met during our junior year at Northwestern University, when we were paired for a group project in our business ethics class. I remember thinking he was too handsome to be smart with his deep blue eyes and that dimple that appeared when he smiled. I was proven wrong when he delivered an impressive presentation that earned us both an A. After 3 months of study sessions that turned into coffee dates and movie nights, we became inseparable. We dated for 3 years before James proposed during a weekend trip to Lake Michigan. The proposal was just like him, thoughtful and perfectly planned. He had arranged a private sunset dinner on the beach, and as the sky turned shades of pink and orange, he got down on one knee and asked me to spend forever with him. I said yes without hesitation. Our wedding was elegant but intimate, with only close friends and family. We danced until dawn and left for our honeymoon in Bali the next morning. Those first years of marriage were everything I had dreamed of, and more. We both worked hard, James at his law firm where he specialized in corporate law, and me building my client base as a financial advisor. We supported each other's ambitions, celebrated each other's wins, and comforted each other through the occasional setbacks. 7 years into our marriage, we had built a beautiful life together. Our four-bedroom house in an upscale Chicago suburb had the wraparound porch I'd always wanted and the home office James needed. We had talked about having children early in our marriage, but we both agreed to focus on our careers first. There was always something we wanted to achieve before bringing a child into the world. A promotion, a renovation, a big vacation. Looking back, I wonder if we were just making excuses. Still, our relationship remained strong. We had date nights every Friday, took exotic vacations twice a year, and still made each other laugh. James would bring me coffee in bed every Sunday morning, and I would leave him little notes in his briefcase when he had important meetings. The physical attraction between us never waned either. Even after 7 years, the spark was very much alive. My relationship with my sister Natalie was much more complicated. Growing up, I was the responsible one, while Natalie was the free spirit. I excelled in school, followed rules, and made plans. Natalie skipped classes, rebelled against our parents, and lived moment to moment. Despite our differences, we were close. I protected her from bullies at school and covered for her when she missed curfew. She made me laugh when I was too serious and pushed me to try new things. Natalie was undeniably the beauty of the family. With her long auburn hair, green eyes, and naturally slim figure, she turned heads wherever she went. I wasn't unattractive by any means, but next to her I felt invisible. Still, I never resented her for it. We each had our strengths. As we grew older, the gap between us widened. I went to college, got my degree, and started building my career. Natalie dropped out of community college after one semester claiming it wasn't for her. She bounced between retail jobs, waitressing gigs, and brief stints as a receptionist. She dated a string of unsuitable men, each relationship ending more dramatically than the last. I worried about her constantly. Our parents had divorced when we were teenagers, and while I processed it through therapy and hard work, Natalie seemed stuck in a pattern of self-destructive behavior. I helped her financially more times than I could count, covering her rent when she was short, paying off a credit card she had maxed out, even buying her a used car when hers broke down beyond repair. James was always supportive of my relationship with Natalie. "She's your sister," he would say. "Family is important." He had even helped her himself, reviewing a lease agreement before she signed it, connecting her with a friend when she needed a job, and giving her career advice she never followed. 8 months before that fateful dinner, Natalie had moved back to Chicago after a failed relationship in Milwaukee. She called me crying, saying she had nowhere to go. Without hesitation, I helped her find an apartment and even paid the security deposit. "It's the last time," I told James. "She needs to stand on her own feet." He had nodded in agreement, but neither of us enforced those boundaries. Our mother was the glue that held our fragmented family together. After the divorce from our father, she had rebuilt her life admirably, focusing on her career as a nurse and her volunteer work at a local animal shelter. Every year we celebrated her birthday together as a family. It was non-negotiable. No matter what was happening in our lives, we showed up for Mom's birthday dinner. It was our tradition, our constant in an ever-changing world. This year would be her 60th, a milestone that deserved special celebration. I had booked a private room at her favorite restaurant, an upscale Italian place in downtown Chicago. I had arranged for flowers, her favorite dessert, and small gifts from each of us. I wanted everything to be perfect. My mother had sacrificed so much for us, and she deserved nothing less. Looking back, I realized how blind I had been. The signs were there, but I refused to see them. Sometimes the things closest to us are the hardest to perceive clearly, especially when they contradict the reality we want to believe in. The changes were subtle at first, so subtle that I dismissed them as products of my imagination. 3 months before that devastating dinner, James started working later than usual. As a corporate lawyer, long hours weren't unusual for him, but there was something different about these late nights. Previously, he would text me updates call during his breaks or bring work home. Now, he would simply say he had meetings and come home long after I had gone to bed. When he was home, James seemed distant, his mind elsewhere. Our conversations became shorter, more superficial. He no longer asked about my day with genuine interest or shared the details of his. When I would touch him casually, a hand on his shoulder or a quick kiss, he would sometimes flinch as if my touch had burned him. His phone became an extension of his hand. He would take calls in another room, his voice too low for me to hear. When I entered a room, he would quickly end his conversation or switch screens on his laptop. Once I noticed him smiling at his phone, a soft, intimate smile I thought was reserved for me. When I asked who he was texting, he said it was a colleague sending him memes. I noticed unfamiliar charges on our credit card statement. Dinner at restaurants we had never visited, a jewelry purchase from a boutique. I didn't recognize an Uber ride at 2 a.m. when he had told me he was working late at the office. When I questioned these, he always had a ready explanation. The dinner was with clients. The jewelry was a gift for his mother's upcoming birthday. The late-night Uber was when he had too much to drink at a work event and responsibly chose not to drive. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. The alternative was too painful to consider. So I pushed my suspicions aside and focused on the good in our marriage. We still had moments of connection, glimpses of the love we had built over the years. I clung to those moments like a drowning person clutches a life raft. There was one incident I couldn't easily dismiss. I had gone shopping at a mall downtown looking for a birthday gift for my mother. As I was leaving a department store, I glimpsed James across the atrium. He was embracing a woman, his arms wrapped tightly around her. I couldn't see her face, just her back and her long auburn hair. Before I could approach them, they separated and walked in the opposite direction. When I asked James about it later, he claimed he had been in court all day. I almost convinced myself I had seen someone who just looked like my husband. While James was changing, so was Natalie. After months of job hopping and financial instability, she suddenly seemed to have her life together. She mentioned a new administrative position at a marketing firm that she enjoyed. She declined my offers of financial help for the first time in years, saying she was doing fine now. Her style evolved from the bohemian, slightly disheveled look she had favored to more polished professional attire. I was proud of her, thinking she had finally found her path. Our weekly sister lunches became monthly, then sporadic. She always had an excuse. Work was busy, she wasn't feeling well, she had other plans. When we did meet, she asked unusually detailed questions about James. How was his work going? Was he stressed? Did he mention any big cases? I thought her interest was sweet, a sign that she valued her relationship with her brother-in-law. The night before my mother's birthday dinner, James and I had our first serious argument in months. He wanted to cancel, claiming he had a work emergency that couldn't wait. I was furious. This was my mother's 60th birthday, a milestone we had been planning for months. "It's one night, James," I had said, my voice rising. "One night for my mother. Your mother-in-law who has always treated you like a son. Whatever it is can wait until tomorrow." "You don't understand the pressure I'm under," he had replied, not meeting my eyes. "This client is important, more important than family. I had asked, hurt and angry. He had sighed deeply, rubbed his eyes, and finally agreed to attend. Fine, I'll move some things around. Later that evening, as he showered, his phone buzzed on the coffee table. I had never been the type to snoop to violate the trust in our relationship, but something pushed me to look at that message. The preview on the screen read, "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. We need to talk about telling." The message was from a contact named NP Work. I felt sick. NP, Natalie Parker. Before I could think about it further, James emerged from the bathroom. I put the phone down quickly, my heart racing. "Everything okay?" he had asked, noticing my flushed face. "Fine," I lied. "Just thinking about tomorrow. I want it to be perfect for Mom." James nodded and picked up his phone, frowning slightly at the screen before typing a quick response. "Just a colleague," he said without my asking. "About that case I mentioned." I nodded, wanting desperately to believe him. In retrospect, I should have confronted him then. I should have demanded the truth. But I was afraid. Afraid of what I might discover, afraid of the changes it would bring to my carefully constructed life. So I said nothing, hoping that the uneasiness in my stomach was just paranoia, that tomorrow would prove my fears unfounded. How wrong I was. The evening started so beautifully. Marino's, my mother's favorite Italian restaurant, had outdone themselves with the private dining room I had reserved. Soft lighting from crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the elegantly set table. White roses, my mother's favorite flowers, adorned the center, their subtle fragrance perfuming the air. The walls were a deep burgundy, the tablecloth crisp white, the silverware gleaming. I had arrived early to make sure everything was perfect. My mother arrived at 7 p.m. sharp, looking radiant in a new navy blue dress I had helped her pick out weeks earlier. Her silver hair was styled in soft waves, and she wore the pearl necklace that had been a gift from my father on their first anniversary before things fell apart between them. Despite their divorce, she had never stopped wearing it. "The end of a marriage doesn't erase the beautiful moments," she always said. "Samantha, honey, this is too much," she said, embracing me. She smelled of the Chanel No. 5 she had worn for as long as I could remember. "You shouldn't have gone to all this trouble." "Nothing is too much for you, Mom," I replied, kissing her cheek. "Especially not for your 60th. James arrived next, looking handsome but tense in his charcoal gray suit. He kissed my mother's cheek and handed her a small gift bag. "Happy birthday, Elizabeth," he said with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He gave me a quick peck on the lips, his gaze darting around the room as if looking for someone else. "Is everything okay?" I whispered as my mother excused herself to the restroom. "Just tired," he replied, loosening his tie slightly. "That case, you know." I nodded, trying to ignore the knot of anxiety forming in my stomach. I watched as he ordered a scotch from the waitress, his third drink of the night, I would later realize. By 7:30 p.m., we had been seated and ordered our appetizers, but Natalie had yet to arrive. This wasn't unusual for her. Punctuality had never been her strong suit. My mother kept checking her phone, a slight frown creasing her forehead. "Should I call her?" she asked, concerned. "I'm sure she's on her way." I reassured her, though I was becoming annoyed. This was typical Natalie, making everything about her, even our mother's milestone birthday. Finally, at 7:45, Natalie made her entrance. She looked stunning in a form-fitting green dress that matched her eyes perfectly. Her auburn hair fell in loose curls down her back, and she wore makeup that enhanced her natural beauty without overwhelming it. She looked more polished than I had seen her in years. "Sorry I'm late," she announced, bending to kiss our mother's cheek. "Traffic was a nightmare." My eyes narrowed slightly. She lived a 10-minute walk from the restaurant. "You look beautiful, darling," our mother said, patting Natalie's hand. "I'm just glad you're here." Natalie smiled and took the seat directly across from James, giving him a look I couldn't quite interpret. He quickly glanced down at his drink, swirling the amber liquid absently. The dinner proceeded with forced normality. We enjoyed our appetizers, bruschetta and calamari, while making small talk about the weather, my mother's volunteer work, and Natalie's supposedly new job. "The marketing firm is really impressed with my work," she was saying, twirling pasta around her fork. "They've even hinted at a promotion." "That's wonderful," my mother beamed. "I always knew you'd find your calling." I noticed James hadn't spoken much since Natalie's arrival. He was on his second scotch now, his food barely touched. After our main courses were cleared, the waitstaff brought out the special dessert I had arranged, a tiramisu cake with "Happy 60th Birthday" written in chocolate. As they sang to my mother, I saw tears of joy in her eyes. This was what I had wanted, a perfect celebration for the woman who had given us everything. Before we cut the cake, I said, standing to toast my mother, "I want to say how grateful I am to have you as my mom. You've taught us strength, kindness, and resilience. You've supported us through every challenge and celebrated every victory. I hope this new decade brings you all the happiness you deserve." Everyone raised their glasses, and my mother wiped away a tear. "Thank you, my darlings. Having both my girls and James here is the best gift I could ask for." We had just started enjoying our dessert when Natalie suddenly stood up her chair, scraping loudly against the floor. The abrupt movement caught everyone's attention. "I have an announcement to make," she said, her voice ringing clear in the sudden silence. "Since we're all here celebrating Mom, I thought it would be the perfect time to share my news." She placed a hand on her stomach, a gesture whose significance wasn't immediately clear to me. "I'm pregnant, 3 months along." There was a moment of stunned silence before my mother gasped in delight. "Natalie, that's wonderful news." She stood to embrace her younger daughter, tears flowing freely now. "I'm going to be a grandmother." I felt a strange mixture of emotions, surprise, confusion, a tinge of jealousy that Natalie would experience motherhood before me, and suspicion about the timing of this announcement at our mother's celebration. Still, I plastered a smile on my face and stood to hug my sister. "Congratulations," I said, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. "This is unexpected." "Who's the father?" my mother asked, still holding Natalie's hands. "Is it someone we know? Are you too serious?" The room seemed to grow very still. I became aware of the soft classical music playing in the background, the clink of silverware from other dining rooms, the heavy beating of my own heart. Natalie's eyes locked with mine, a strange expression crossing her face, something like triumph mixed with defiance. "The father is James," she said clearly, her gaze never leaving mine. "We've been in love for months." The world tilted sideways. I heard my mother's shocked gasp, felt her grip on my arm as if from a great distance. My vision tunneled until all I could see was Natalie's face, her slight smile, and James beside her head, bowed, saying nothing to deny the bombshell she had just dropped. "What?" I managed to whisper, my voice barely audible. "I'm sorry you had to find out this way," Natalie continued, her voice sickeningly sympathetic. "We didn't mean for it to happen. It just did. We have a connection that couldn't be denied." I turned to James, waiting for him to laugh, to tell Natalie to stop this cruel joke. But he remained silent, his face a mask of guilt, and something else. Relief. Was he relieved that his secret was finally out? James? I choked out his name, a plea for denial. He finally looked up, his blue eyes I had looked into 1,000 times, eyes I thought I knew, now unreadable to me. "Samantha," he began, his voice low and strained, "I never meant to hurt you." In that moment, something inside me shattered. Without conscious thought, I found myself on my feet. I moved around the table in 2 quick strides and slapped James hard across the face, the crack of skin on skin shockingly loud in the quiet room. Before anyone could react, I turned and did the same to Natalie, her head snapping sideways from the force of the blow. "How could you?" I screamed, my voice unrecognizable. "My husband, my sister, the two people I trusted most in this world." The restaurant staff had appeared at the doorway, alarmed by the commotion. My mother was crying, reaching for me, but I couldn't bear to be touched. I grabbed my purse and ran pushing past waiters and diners, ignoring the stares and whispers. I burst through the front doors into the cool night air, gasping as if I had been underwater. I made it to the parking lot before my legs gave out. I collapsed onto a concrete parking bumper, sobs tearing from my throat. This couldn't be happening. My sister and my husband, a baby, their baby. The betrayal was too enormous to comprehend. I heard the restaurant door open and close, followed by hurried footsteps. I looked up to see my mother rushing toward me, her face streaked with tears, her arms outstretched. Without a word, she enveloped me in an embrace as I sobbed against her shoulder like a child. "I didn't know," she whispered against my hair. I swear I didn't know. I'm so sorry, baby. So sorry. We stayed like that for a long time, holding each other in a darkened parking lot while inside the ruins of our family lay scattered like broken glass. The days following that catastrophic dinner passed in a blur of pain so intense it was almost physical. I checked into a hotel that night, unable to face returning to the home I shared with James. I couldn't bear the thought of sleeping in our bed, seeing his clothes in our closet, looking at the photographs of our wedding that lined our hallway. The first night, I didn't sleep at all. I paced the impersonal hotel room, alternating between sobbing uncontrollably and sitting in numb silence staring at nothing. I replayed the dinner in my mind, searching for clues I had missed, wondering if there had been a way to prevent this devastation. I thought of every late night James had claimed to be working, every time Natalie had canceled our plans, every strange charge on our credit card. The puzzle pieces were fitting together now, forming a picture too painful to look at directly. My phone buzzed constantly. James called 27 times that first night. I counted each call, watched his name flash on my screen, but couldn't bring myself to answer. His text messages piled up, each one more desperate than the last. Please talk to me. I never meant for this to happen. It was a mistake. I still care about you. We need to discuss this like adults. Natalie texted to her messages, a strange mixture of apology and justification. I'm so sorry, Sam. I never wanted to hurt you. You have to believe me, we didn't plan this. The baby changes everything. Try to understand. I've always looked up to you. I never thought I'd find someone like James. Their messages only fueled my rage. I threw my phone against the wall so hard that the screen cracked, a spider web of fractures obscuring their words. On the second day, I ordered a bottle of wine from room service and drank it alone, staring out the window at the Chicago skyline. The city looked the same, buildings reaching toward the skylights, blinking on as dusk fell, people going about their lives. How could the world continue turning when mine had stopped so abruptly? By the third day, I had destroyed most of the hotel room. I had swept the toiletries off the bathroom counter in a fit of rage, thrown the decorative pillows across the room, and knocked a lamp to the floor. The hotel staff left me alone, perhaps sensing that my devastation required privacy. My mother came to see me on the fourth day. I hadn't answered her calls either, but she somehow tracked me down. When I opened the door, she took one look at me. Unwashed hair, red-rimmed eyes, wearing the same clothes from days before, and pulled me into her arms without a word. You need to eat something, she said, finally surveying the room with concern. She ordered food I didn't want and sat with me while I picked at it. Have you spoken to them? I asked eventually, my voice hoarse from crying and disuse. My mother hesitated. Natalie called me, James too. She reached for my hand. Sweetheart, I know this is unimaginably painful, but at some point you'll need to talk to them. There are practical matters to consider. Practical matters? I repeated incredulously. My husband and sister betrayed me in the most fundamental way possible, and you're worried about practical matters. Samantha. She began, her tone gentle but firm. You can't stay in this hotel room forever. You have a home, a job, a life to return to. A life that's been destroyed, I countered bitterly. Changed, she corrected. Drastically and painfully changed, but not destroyed. You're still you. Strong, intelligent, resilient you. I didn't feel strong or resilient. I felt hollow, as if something essential had been scooped out of me, leaving only an empty shell. After a week of hiding, I knew I needed to face reality. I waited until a time when I knew James would be at work and returned to our house to gather some of my things. The sight of our home, the one we had chosen together, filled with furniture we had picked out side by side, decorated with souvenirs from our travels, hit me like a physical blow. I moved through the rooms like a ghost, collecting clothes, toiletries, important documents. In our home office, I found James's laptop open. He had never logged out of his email account. Without fully considering what I was doing, I began to search through his messages. It didn't take long to find evidence of his relationship with Natalie. Emails arranging meetings, discussing their feelings, planning how to tell me about the pregnancy. The earliest message I found was dated 6 months prior, half a year of deception right under my nose. As I scrolled through their correspondence, I found something else. Receipts for expensive gifts James had purchased for my sister: a gold bracelet, designer perfume, reservations at exclusive restaurants I had always wanted to try. While I was helping Natalie pay her rent, my husband was buying her luxury items with our shared money. I was still reading when I heard the front door open. James stood in the doorway of the office, his expression shifting from surprise to guilt when he saw what I was doing. "Samantha," he said, taking a step toward me, "I came home early hoping to find you here. We need to talk." I stood up so quickly that the chair toppled backward. "Talk? Now you want to talk, after 6 months of lying to my face?" His eyes widened. "You've been reading my emails?" "And you've been sleeping with my sister," I shot back. "I think my invasion of privacy pales in comparison to yours, don't you?" He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made my heart ache despite my anger. "It wasn't planned, Sam. You have to believe that. It just happened." "Things don't just happen, James. An affair with my sister doesn't just happen. You made choices, hundreds of small choices that led to this disaster." "I know," he admitted, his shoulders slumping. "And I'm sorry. Truly sorry." "For which part?" I demanded. "For sleeping with my sister, for getting her pregnant, or just for getting caught?" "For hurting you," he said quietly. "That was never what I wanted." "What did you want then? To have us both? To leave me for her? What was the end game here, James?" He hesitated, and in that hesitation I saw the truth. "You were going to leave me for her." I whispered, the realization washing over me like ice water. "Even before the pregnancy." "Samantha, it's complicated," he began, but I cut him off. "No, it's actually very simple. You betrayed me in the worst possible way, and now you want to ride off into the sunset with my sister and your baby." I laughed, a harsh sound without humor. "I hope you'll be very happy together." "It's not like that," he protested. "I care about you, Sam. I always will. But with the baby coming, I have to do the right thing." "The right thing," I repeated incredulously. "The right thing would have been keeping your wedding vows. The right thing would have been not sleeping with my sister. Don't you dare talk to me about doing the right thing now." I grabbed the suitcase I had packed and pushed past him, but he caught my arm. "We need to talk about divorce," he said, his voice low. "Practically speaking." I pulled my arm from his grasp. "Have your lawyer call mine." I spat, though I didn't even have a divorce attorney yet. "I don't want to talk to you again unless absolutely necessary." As I headed for the door, he called after me. "Where are you going? Where are you staying?" "That's no longer any of your concern," I replied without turning around. The door slammed behind me with a finality that echoed through my bones. My next stop was Natalie's apartment, the one I had helped her find and pay for. I didn't call ahead. I wanted to see her face when she opened the door, wanted to catch her off guard the way she had blindsided me at dinner. She looked surprised when she saw me, but not afraid. If anything, there was a hint of defiance in her expression as she stepped back to let me in. Her apartment was neater than I had ever seen it, and there were touches that hadn't been there before. New throw pillows, a vase of fresh flowers, framed photographs I hadn't seen. I picked up one of the frames and felt sick. It was a picture of Natalie and James, his arm around her shoulders, both of them smiling broadly. They looked like a couple. "When was this taken?" I asked, my voice deadly calm. "A couple of months ago," she admitted, "at Navy Pier." I set the photo down carefully, resisting the urge to smash it against the wall. Why Natalie? Of all the men in Chicago, in the world, why my husband? She sat on the edge of her couch, hands folded in her lap. There was a slight roundness to her abdomen that I hadn't noticed before, or perhaps hadn't wanted to see. "It wasn't intentional, Sam. We started talking when he was helping me with that job application. One conversation led to another, and then—" She trailed off, shrugging slightly, as if the conclusion was obvious. "And then you decided to betray your sister." I finished for her. "The sister who has bailed you out of every mess you've ever created. The sister who has supported you financially and emotionally for years." "I know how it looks," she began, but I cut her off. "It looks like my sister seduced my husband because she's always been jealous of me. It looks like you took something that wasn't yours because you've always taken what wasn't yours." Her expression hardened. James is a grown man who made his own decisions. He wasn't happy, Sam. Did you ever notice that he felt trapped, unfulfilled? And you were right there to help him feel better, I said bitterly. How convenient. We didn't plan for me to get pregnant, she continued as if I hadn't spoken. But now that I am, we're trying to do the right thing. There it is again. The right thing. Funny how the right thing only became important after you had thoroughly enjoyed doing the wrong thing. She sighed, looking at me with what seemed like pity. I've always admired you, Sam. You have everything together. The perfect career, the perfect house, the perfect husband. I corrected, my voice breaking slightly. Had the perfect husband. The thing is, she continued, her voice taking on an edge I had never heard before, you were so focused on your career, on making money, that you neglected him. He needed someone who put him first. I stared at her, disbelief warring with rage. So this is my fault. I worked hard to build a career, to create a stable life. A life that allowed me to support you, by the way, and that justifies you sleeping with my husband. I'm just saying there are two sides to every story. And what about my side, Natalie? Did either of you think about that while you were sneaking around behind my back? I took a step closer to her, my voice dropping. Did you think about me when you were in bed with my husband? When you were spending the money I earned? When you were planning how to tell me at our mother's birthday dinner? She had the grace to look uncomfortable. The dinner wasn't planned. The moment felt right. Mom was so happy, and I thought maybe in a public place you wouldn't make a scene. I laughed, a hollow sound. So it was a strategic decision. Announce your affair with my husband at our mother's milestone birthday in a public restaurant to minimize my reaction. How considerate of you. Sam, she began, her tone placating, I know you're hurt and angry. You have every right to be. But there's a baby involved now, your niece or nephew. Don't, I warned, holding up a hand. Don't you dare use your child to manipulate me. That baby is innocent, yes, but you and James are not. She stood, placing a hand protectively over her slightly rounded stomach. James and I are building a family now. I hope someday you can accept that and be part of our lives. The audacity of her statement left me momentarily speechless. When I found my voice again, it was cold with fury. Let me make something perfectly clear, Natalie. I want nothing to do with you or your relationship with my husband, soon-to-be ex-husband. The only reason I'm here is to tell you that you have 30 days to find a new place to live. Her expression shifted from self-righteous to alarmed. What? You can't do that. This is my home. This is an apartment that I co-signed for, that I've helped pay for, that I found for you. Your name may be on the lease, but my credit made it possible. I've already called the property management company. The lease won't be renewed when it expires next month. But I'm pregnant. You can't throw a pregnant woman out on the street. I'm sure James will take care of you, I replied coldly. After all, you're building a family now. As I turned to leave, a detail caught my eye. A folder on her coffee table with my doctor's logo. I picked it up before she could stop me and flipped it open. Inside were copies of my medical records, including the fertility tests I had undergone 6 months ago, when James and I had finally started discussing having children. Tests that had shown potential difficulties conceiving due to endometriosis. I looked up at Natalie, a new understanding dawning. You went through my medical records. How did you even get these? She at least had the decency to look ashamed. I found them in your home office when I was there for dinner a few months ago. I was looking for a pen and saw the folder. And you read private medical information about me, then used it to go after my husband. The depths of her betrayal seemed to have no bottom. You knew we were trying to have a baby, and you used my medical condition against me. It wasn't like that, she protested. I just saw an opportunity. James was worried about your fertility issues. He really wants to be a father. I could give him that. The calculated cruelty of her actions left me breathless. My own sister had seen my vulnerability and exploited it in the most devastating way possible. Get out of my sight, I whispered, my voice shaking with rage. You have 30 days to find a new place to live. After that, I never want to see you again." I left her apartment with my head held high, but once inside my car, I collapsed against the steering wheel, sobs racking my body. The betrayal was even deeper than I had imagined. My sister hadn't just slept with my husband. She had deliberately targeted him using my private medical information to drive a wedge between us and offer him the child she knew I might struggle to conceive. In that moment, something shifted inside me. The overwhelming pain began to harden into resolve. I would not let them destroy me. I would find a way through this nightmare, and I would emerge stronger on the other side. They had taken enough from me. They would not take my dignity or my future. The completeness of my life's collapse was staggering. In the span of 2 weeks, I had lost my husband, my sister, my home, and any sense of security I had carefully built over the years. The pain was so overwhelming that there were moments when I couldn't breathe, when I would find myself on the floor of my hotel room gasping for air, wondering if heartbreak could be fatal. I took a leave of absence from my job. I couldn't focus on investment strategies and retirement plans when my own future had imploded. My boss, a kind woman who had mentored me for years, didn't ask for details. "Take all the time you need," she said, concern evident in her voice. "Your clients will understand a family emergency." Family emergency. Such a benign term for the nuclear explosion that had destroyed my family. My mother tried to maintain a relationship with both me and Natalie, a balancing act that was clearly tearing her apart. "I love you both," she said during one of her visits to my hotel room. "I don't condone what they did, but Natalie is still my daughter, and that baby is my grandchild." Her words, though understandable, felt like another betrayal. "So you're just going to forgive her, accept them as a couple, pretend that what they did wasn't monstrous?" "No, Samantha, that's not what I'm saying." My mother sighed suddenly, looking older than her 60 years. "There's no guidebook for this situation. I'm trying to navigate it the best I can. I'm asking you to understand that while I am completely on your side, I can't completely cut Natalie out of my life. Even though she destroyed mine," the question hung in the air between us, heavy with pain. "Your life isn't destroyed, sweetheart. It's damaged terribly so, but not beyond repair." She took my hand. "You are the strongest person I know. You will rebuild. You will find happiness again." Her faith in me was touching, but felt misplaced. I didn't feel strong. I felt shattered, each piece of me scattered and unrecognizable. The isolation was perhaps the most unexpected aspect of my new reality. Friends who I thought would rally around me instead seemed uncomfortable with the messiness of my situation. Some took James's side, believing whatever version of events he had shared. Others simply disappeared, unwilling to be dragged into what they saw as a family drama. A few reached out with awkward texts or calls, not knowing what to say in the face of such betrayal. I found myself alone with my thoughts, far too often replaying every moment of my marriage, searching for signs I had missed, clues that might have prevented this outcome. The examination was exhausting and futile, but I couldn't stop torturing myself with what ifs and if onlys. Meanwhile, the divorce proceedings had begun. James's attorney sent over a settlement offer that was insultingly unfair. He wanted to keep our house, claiming he would need it for his new family. He suggested I take a smaller percentage of our shared assets due to his increased financial responsibilities, a thinly veiled reference to Natalie's pregnancy. The document was cold calculated and seemed designed to punish me for a betrayal I hadn't committed. My newly hired divorce attorney, a sharp-eyed woman with a reputation for toughness, was outraged on my behalf. "This is unacceptable," she said, tapping the document with a perfectly manicured nail. "He's trying to bully you when he's the one who broke your marriage vows. We're going to fight this, Samantha. Hard." Fighting required energy I wasn't sure I possessed, but I nodded anyway. I would not allow myself to be victimized twice, first by their betrayal, then by an unjust divorce settlement. As I was going through our financial records to provide documentation for my attorney, I discovered something disturbing. James had been transferring money from our joint account to a separate account I knew nothing about. Small amounts at first, then larger sums as his relationship with Natalie progressed. I also found evidence that he had been using company funds for personal expenses, a clear ethics violation for an attorney. When I brought this information to my divorce lawyer, her eyes lit up. "This changes everything," she said with a grim smile. Financial impropriety during marriage is taken very seriously by the courts. And if his law firm finds out he's been misappropriating funds, he could face professional consequences as well. It was a powerful piece of leverage, but using it felt like crossing a line. Would I really threaten James's career? Then I remembered how casually he and Natalie had demolished my life, how they had plotted and schemed behind my back, how they had announced their betrayal at my mother's birthday dinner, with no regard for the pain they would cause. My hesitation evaporated. "Use it," I told my attorney. "Use everything we have." Word of our divorce spread quickly through our social and professional circles. I heard whispers that James and Natalie had moved in together, that they were preparing for the baby, that they seemed happy despite the circumstances. Each rumor was a fresh cut on an already bleeding wound. I tried to lose myself in distractions. Binge watching TV shows I didn't care about, reading books. I couldn't focus on drinking too much wine alone in my hotel room. Nothing helped. The pain remained constant, a weight pressing down on my chest, making it difficult to breathe, to think, to function. The lowest point came one night after I had consumed an entire bottle of wine. I got behind the wheel of my car, not with any clear destination in mind, just a desperate need to escape the four walls of my hotel room. I didn't make it far. I misjudged a turn and scraped the side of my car against a concrete barrier. The impact wasn't serious, but it was enough to deploy the airbag, which left me with a bruised cheek and a sprained wrist. The police officer who responded to the accident was kind but firm. My blood alcohol level was over the legal limit, but instead of arresting me, he called an ambulance and had me transported to the emergency room. "You've been through enough tonight," he said, his eyes sympathetic as he took in my disheveled appearance and tear-stained face. "But please get some help. This could have been much worse." I spent the night in the hospital, my wrist bandaged and my pride in tatters. As I lay in the sterile bed listening to the beeps of monitors and the squeaking of nurses' shoes in the corridor, I hit rock bottom. I had lost everything that mattered to me, and now I was risking my life and potentially the lives of others. This wasn't who I was. This wasn't who I wanted to be. My phone rang at 2 a.m., and I was surprised to see it was James's mother calling. Martha had always been kind to me, treating me like the daughter she never had. We had maintained a warm relationship despite the occasional tension between James and his parents over his career choices. "Samantha," her voice was thick with concern. "The hospital called us as your emergency contact. Are you all right?" I hadn't updated my emergency contacts. James was still listed as my primary contact, with his parents as secondary. "I'm fine," I assured her. "Just a minor accident. They're keeping me overnight as a precaution." "Oh, thank goodness." She paused, and I could hear the hesitation in her voice. "Samantha, I want you to know that Robert and I are heartbroken about what James has done. We raised him better than this." Her words brought fresh tears to my eyes. "Thank you, Martha. That means a lot. We still consider you our daughter," she continued, her voice firm. "Whatever happens between you and James, that won't change for us." After we hung up, I lay awake thinking about Martha's words. Her loyalty when my own sister had betrayed me so completely was a small beacon of light in the darkness that had enveloped me. If James's parents could still love me, still believe in me, perhaps there was hope for rebuilding some semblance of a life from the ashes of what had been destroyed. The next morning, as I was being discharged, a nurse handed me a pamphlet for a support group for people going through divorce. "You might find it helpful," she said gently. "Sometimes talking to others who understand can make all the difference." I took the pamphlet, not expecting much, but desperate enough to try anything. That decision, made in a moment of vulnerability, would turn out to be the first step on my long road to recovery. The support group met in a church basement on Tuesday evenings. I almost didn't go to that first meeting. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, engine off, debating whether to walk in or drive away. What could these strangers possibly say that would make my situation any better? How could anyone understand the unique pain of having your husband leave you for your sister? Eventually, I forced myself to enter the building. The room was set up with folding chairs in a circle, a table with coffee and cookies to one side. About a dozen people were already seated, a mix of ages and backgrounds. They looked up as I entered, and several smiled in welcome. The group facilitator, a woman named Grace with kind eyes and silver-streaked hair, approached me immediately. "First time?" she asked, extending her hand. I nodded, suddenly shy. "I'm not sure if I belong here. My situation is complicated." "All situations are complicated," she replied with a gentle smile. "That's why we're here. No judgment, just support." I took a seat in the circle, hands clutched tightly in my lap. When it was my turn to introduce myself, I hesitated. "I'm Samantha," I began, my voice barely audible. "My husband left me for my sister. She's pregnant with his child." I expected gasps of shock or uncomfortable silence. Instead, there were nods of understanding and murmurs of sympathy. A man across the circle caught my eye. "My wife left me for my brother," he said simply. "I thought I was the only one with that particular nightmare. It's been 2 years and I'm still standing. You will be too." His words and the simple understanding in his eyes broke something open inside me. For the first time since that devastating dinner, I felt a tiny spark of hope. If he could survive this, maybe I could too. That support group became my lifeline. Every Tuesday, I shared my struggles and listened to others share theirs. I learned that grief isn't linear, that healing doesn't happen on a predictable timeline, that it's normal to have good days followed by crushing bad ones. Most importantly, I learned that I wasn't alone. Parallel to my emotional recovery, I began to take practical steps to rebuild my life. I found a therapist who specialized in trauma and betrayal. Dr. Levine was direct but compassionate, challenging me when I fell into self-pity, but validating the enormity of what I had experienced. "Your reaction is normal," she assured me during one session when I admitted to fantasizing about revenge scenarios. "But holding on to that anger will only hurt you in the long run. We need to work toward a place where James and Natalie have no power over your happiness." I couldn't imagine such a place existed, but I trusted her expertise and committed to the work. I also made the difficult decision to return to my job. The routine of work, the focus required to advise clients on their financial futures, gave me hours of respite from my own problems. My boss welcomed me back warmly, and if my colleagues had heard rumors about my personal life, they were professional enough not to mention them. With my attorney's guidance, I gathered evidence of James's financial misconduct. We discovered he had been secretly transferring company funds to the account he used to support Natalie for months. It wasn't a huge amount, but it was enough to constitute a serious ethical breach for an attorney. Rather than immediately reporting him to his firm or the Bar Association, my attorney suggested using this information as leverage in our divorce negotiations. "Sometimes the threat is more powerful than the execution," she advised. When James's attorney received our counteroffer, along with copies of the financial records we had uncovered, the tone of the negotiations shifted dramatically. Gone was the aggressive posturing, replaced by a surprising willingness to compromise. James agreed to sell our house and split the proceeds equally to divide our other assets fairly, and to a reasonable alimony arrangement given the length of our marriage. My attorney was triumphant. "He knows he doesn't have a leg to stand on," she said. "You've got him cornered and he knows it." The victory felt hollow. I didn't want revenge. I wanted my life back. But that life was gone forever, so I accepted the settlement as the best outcome I could hope for under the circumstances. With the legal matters progressing, I turned my attention to finding a new place to live. I couldn't stay in the hotel indefinitely, and I needed a home, a space that was mine alone, untainted by memories of betrayal. I found a modern apartment in a different neighborhood with floor-to-ceiling windows that filled the space with light and a small balcony where I could have my morning coffee. Furnishing it became a project that gave me purpose. I chose pieces that reflected my taste alone, not compromises made with James's preferences in mind. A bold blue sofa I had always wanted, but he thought too impractical. Abstract art for the walls instead of the traditional landscapes he preferred. A kitchen stocked with spices for the elaborate meals I enjoyed cooking, but he had only tolerated. My mother helped me shop her enthusiasm for the project a balm to our still healing relationship. We hadn't fully resolved the tension over her continued contact with Natalie, but we had reached an unspoken agreement not to discuss my sister when we were together. "This place is so you," she said, as we arranged the last of my new furniture. "It feels like a fresh start." A fresh start. The phrase resonated with me. That's what I needed. Not just a new apartment, but a complete reset of my life. I started small. I joined a gym and committed to regular workouts, finding that physical exertion helped manage the anxiety and anger that still plagued me. I reached out to old friends I had lost touch with during my marriage, rebuilding connections that had nothing to do with James or my former life. I even signed up for a cooking class, something I had always wanted to do but never made time for. Each small step felt like reclaiming a piece of myself that had been lost in the devastation of betrayal. I began to rediscover who I was outside of my marriage, outside of the shadow of what James and Natalie had done. Some days were still overwhelmed by grief and anger, but increasingly there were moments of genuine peace, even occasional happiness. The most unexpected development came through my support group. Grace, the facilitator, mentioned that a local women's shelter was looking for volunteers to offer financial literacy workshops to women rebuilding their lives after leaving abusive relationships. "With your background, Samantha, you'd be perfect," she suggested. I was hesitant at first. "I'm still such a mess myself. What do I have to offer these women?" "Your expertise, for one thing," Grace replied, "and your firsthand understanding of how it feels to have your life upended, to have to start over. That empathy is invaluable." I agreed to give it a try, and that decision became another turning point in my recovery. Working with women who had survived far worse than my situation put my own problems into perspective. Their courage in the face of overwhelming obstacles inspired me, and using my professional skills to make a tangible difference in their lives gave me a sense of purpose I had been missing. One evening, about 6 months after that fateful dinner, I received an unexpected text message from James. "Can we meet? There are some things I need to say to you in person." My first instinct was to refuse. What could he possibly say that would make any difference now? But after consulting with Dr. Levine, I agreed to a brief meeting in a public cafe. I needed closure, and perhaps this was a chance to get it. James looked terrible when I saw him, thinner with dark circles under his eyes and new lines etched around his mouth. The sight gave me no pleasure. I had loved this man for a decade, and seeing him diminished only added to the tragedy of what we had lost. "Thank you for coming," he said, his voice subdued as we sat across from each other, 2 cups of coffee between us like a buffer zone. "What did you want to say, James?" I kept my tone neutral, my expression composed. I had rehearsed this moment, determined not to show any vulnerability. He took a deep breath. "I want to apologize, not just for the affair, but for how I handled everything after. The divorce negotiations, trying to take advantage of you financially, all of it. It was wrong, and I'm sorry." I nodded, acknowledging his words without offering forgiveness. "What prompted this sudden attack of conscience?" "Nothing sudden about it," he replied with a bitter smile. "I've regretted my choices every day, but pride and fear kept me from admitting it." He paused, staring into his coffee. "Natalie and I aren't together anymore. I'm just co-parenting from a distance." The news surprised me. What happened? The relationship was built on deception and betrayal, not exactly a solid foundation. He looked up at me, his blue eyes haunted. "Once the excitement wore off, once we had to deal with real life, and not just stolen moments, we realized we had nothing in common except our guilt." "And the baby?" Despite everything, I couldn't help asking. "A little girl, Sophia Elizabeth." His expression softened slightly. "She's innocent in all this. I'm trying to be a good father to her, even if I failed at being a good husband to you." I nodded, a complex mix of emotions swirling inside me. I couldn't bring myself to ask to see a picture or inquire further about the child who, under different circumstances, might have been my niece. Some boundaries were necessary for my continued healing. "I lost everything that mattered," James continued. "My marriage, my home, the respect of my colleagues, my relationship with my parents, all for something that wasn't real." He reached across the table as if to take my hand, then seemed to think better of it and withdrew. "I know you can never forgive me, and I don't expect you to. I just wanted you to know that I understand the magnitude of what I destroyed, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life." As I looked at the man I had once loved beyond reason, now broken by his own choices, I felt something unexpected. Not satisfaction or vindication, but a profound sadness for all that had been lost, all the potential happiness that had been squandered. "I appreciate your apology," I said finally. "I hope you find peace, James. I'm working on finding mine." We parted ways after that brief conversation, and as I walked away, I felt lighter somehow. His apology hadn't erased the pain, but it had validated it. And knowing that the relationship that had cost me so much had collapsed under the weight of its own corruption provided a sense of justice that no court settlement could have achieved. 1 year after the dinner that shattered my world, I stood in my apartment getting ready for a celebration. Not of that painful anniversary, but of my promotion to senior financial advisor at my firm. The past 12 months had been the most challenging of my life, but also transformative in ways I never could have anticipated. I caught my reflection in the mirror as I applied my makeup. I looked different. Not just the new haircut or the clothes that reflected my evolved style, but something in my eyes. There was a depth there that hadn't existed before, a hard-won wisdom born of survival. My phone chimed with a text from Michael wishing me luck on my first day in the new position. We had met 3 months earlier at a charity event for the women's shelter where I volunteered. He was an architect who designed affordable housing, passionate about his work, and refreshingly straightforward. Our relationship was progressing slowly, deliberately. I had been transparent about my past, and he had been patient with my hesitations and boundaries. "No rush," he had said when I explained my need to take things slowly. "Good things are worth waiting for." The divorce had been finalized 6 months after that initial dinner revelation. The house had been sold, assets divided. James had kept his word about the settlement, perhaps out of guilt, perhaps out of fear that I would reveal his financial indiscretions to his firm. I chose not to pursue that avenue of revenge. His actions had already cost him enough, and continuing to focus on punishing him would only keep me tethered to the past. My relationship with my mother had healed, though we still navigated careful boundaries around the subject of Natalie. I knew that my mother maintained contact with her and had a relationship with James and Natalie's daughter, my niece. I couldn't bring myself to share in that connection yet. Perhaps someday, but not now. The wound was still too raw, the betrayal too profound. Some mutual friends had tried to broker peace between Natalie and me, suggesting that family should eventually reconcile. I declined these well-meaning but misguided efforts. Forgiveness didn't require reconciliation or resumed relationship. I could release the consuming anger I had felt toward my sister without welcoming her back into my life. Some breaches of trust are too severe to repair. I had learned that healing isn't a destination, but a process, ongoing and imperfect. There were still days when grief ambushed me, when a song or a scent or a random memory would trigger a wave of sadness so intense it took my breath away. But those moments became less frequent, less debilitating as time passed, and I continued the work of rebuilding. The support group remained a constant in my life, though my role had evolved. I had become a mentor to newcomers, offering the same understanding and hope that had been extended to me when I first arrived broken and despairing. "If I can survive this, you can too," I told them, and meant it. My volunteer work at the women's shelter had expanded into a formal financial literacy program that was now being implemented at shelters across the city. Using my professional skills to empower women in crisis gave me a sense of purpose that transcended my personal pain. As I prepared to leave for work that morning, I paused to look around my apartment. The space I had created for myself filled with objects chosen with intention, arranged according to my preferences alone. It was a physical manifestation of the life I had built from the ruins of betrayal, different from what I had planned, but authentically, uncompromisingly mine. The path to this point had been excruciating. There had been moments when I wasn't sure I would survive the pain, when the weight of loss seemed too heavy to bear. But I had survived, and more than that, I had discovered strengths I never knew I possessed. I had learned that family isn't just defined by blood or marriage, but by loyalty and respect. I had built a chosen family of friends, colleagues, and support group members who had stood by me at my lowest points and celebrated my progress. I had learned that starting over while terrifying can be an opportunity to create something better, truer to yourself than what was lost. The life I was building now reflected my values, my priorities, my authentic self in ways my marriage had not. Most importantly, I had learned that my worth wasn't determined by what had been done to me, but by how I chose to respond. The betrayal by the two people I had trusted most could have destroyed me. Instead, it had ultimately revealed my capacity for resilience, for growth, for creating meaning from suffering. They say blood is thicker than water, but I've learned that self-respect is thicker than both. My sister and husband's betrayal didn't break me. It rebuilt me into someone stronger than I ever thought possible. Now, I understand that sometimes losing everything is the only way to find what truly matters. What about you? Has a betrayal ever led you to an unexpected blessing? Leave a comment below to share your experience. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories of resilience and renewal. Remember, it's not about how many times you fall, but how many times you rise.